Imagine a world where the sun was not just a source of light, but the very essence of life itself, a god to be worshipped above all others. Now imagine a pharaoh so bold, so unshakable in his beliefs, that he would defy centuries of tradition to elevate this single god above the entire pantheon of Egypt. That man was Akhenaten, the heretic king, the visionary ruler whose reign would ignite both awe and outrage. And let me assure you, what you're about to discover in this story may completely change how you see ancient Egypt, especially the final revelation, which might be the most intriguing of them all. Hello, fan of ancient Egypt. Welcome to the Mysteries of Ancient Egypt, your channel for uncovering the forgotten truths and extraordinary lives of Egypt's most fascinating figures. Today, we embark on a journey into the life of Akhenaten, the pharaoh who dared to challenge the gods themselves. Before we dive in, take a moment to check if you're already subscribed to the Mysteries of Ancient Egypt. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming. Akhenaten's story begins not as a revolutionary, but as a prince named Amenhotep, son of Pharaoh Amenhotep III and Queen Taye, one of the most influential women in Egyptian history. Born into a world of immense wealth, rigid tradition, and powerful gods, young Amenhotep was expected to follow in the footsteps of his ancestors, maintaining the worship of Amun and the great Theban priesthood. But destiny had other plans. Historians like Cyril Aldred and Nicholas Reeves have suggested that even in his youth, Akhenaten was different, deeply spiritual, contemplative, perhaps even withdrawn from the lavish court life that surrounded him. Whether this was due to personal conviction, a spiritual vision, or political calculation remains a mystery. But one thing is certain: from the moment he ascended the throne, Egypt would never be the same. When Amenhotep became pharaoh, he initially maintained the appearance of tradition. Temples to Amun still received offerings, festivals continued, and the priesthood held its power. But beneath this facade, seeds of change were already taking root, seeds that would grow into one of the most radical religious revolutions the ancient world had ever seen. If you've followed the story so far, tell me in the comments, do you think Akhenaten was a visionary ahead of his time, or a ruler who brought chaos to Egypt? When Amenhotep took the throne, he was still bound by centuries of Egyptian tradition. The god Amun, worshipped at Karnak, dominated religious life, and the priesthood held immense political influence. Yet only a few years into his reign, something began to shift. The young pharaoh started to publicly favor another deity, Aten, the visible disk of the sun. Unlike Amun, whose image was hidden from mortal eyes, Aten shone openly in the sky, its rays touching all life. At first, this shift was subtle. In inscriptions and official art, Aten appeared alongside the traditional gods. But over time, Akhenaten, still officially Amenhotep, began to portray Aten as supreme. The god's imagery was unique, a sun disk with rays ending in human hands, offering the Ankh, the symbol of life. It was a radical departure from Egypt's pantheon, which was filled with gods in animal or human form. By the 5th year of his reign, Amenhotep had taken a dramatic step. He changed his name to Akhenaten, meaning effective for Aten. This was no small gesture. In ancient Egypt, a name carried power and divine authority. By abandoning the name Amenhotep, which honored Amun, he was publicly breaking with the old religion. This was the spark that ignited a conflict that would ripple through every level of Egyptian society. Historians debate the reasons for this transformation. Some argue it was a genuine spiritual awakening, a belief in Aten as the one true god. Others suspect political strategy, a way to weaken the powerful Amun priesthood and centralize religious power in the hands of the king. Whatever the motive, Akhenaten's actions were unprecedented. Soon, the worship of Amun and other gods was suppressed. Temples were closed, their wealth redirected to Aten's cult. The priesthood of Amun, once one of the most influential forces in Egypt, found itself stripped of authority. In their place, Akhenaten positioned himself as the sole intermediary between Aten and the people. And then came perhaps his boldest move, the construction of a brand new capital city dedicated entirely to Aten. Akhetaten, the horizon of Aten. Built in what is now modern Amarna, it was unlike anything Egypt had seen. Temples were open air, allowing Aten's rays to shine directly on worshippers. The art of the period reflected a dramatic change as well. Elongated figures, intimate family scenes, and naturalistic details replaced the rigid, idealized forms of earlier dynasties. This was the dawn of the Amarna Period, a time when Egypt's religion, art, and culture were reshaped in the image of one man's vision. But such radical change would not come without enemies, and the consequences of Akhenaten's choices would haunt Egypt long after his death. If you're enjoying this journey through the life of Akhenaten, leave a like on this video so the mysteries of ancient Egypt can continue bringing you stories that challenge everything you thought you knew about history. Akhetaten rose from the desert in record time, a shining city bathed in sunlight, designed to glorify Aten and his chosen pharaoh. Its location was deliberate, midway between Memphis and Thebes, far from the traditional power centers and priestly influence. On the city's boundary stele, Akhenaten declared it sacred to Aten alone, untouchable by other gods. Here the pharaoh could rule without interference, surrounded by followers loyal to his vision. Daily life in Akhetaten was a blend of politics, religion, and art. The open-air temples welcomed the sun's first rays at dawn, and ceremonies celebrated Aten's life-giving power throughout the day. Artisans worked tirelessly to produce reliefs, statues, and inscriptions depicting the royal family bathed in Aten's light. Unlike previous pharaohs who were portrayed as distant and godlike, Akhenaten appeared in intimate scenes, kissing his daughters, holding Nefertiti's hand, or playing with his children. This was revolutionary, offering a glimpse into the private life of Egypt's most powerful family. Central to Akhenaten's vision was Queen Nefertiti, whose beauty and presence were legendary. Far from a passive consort, Nefertiti was his partner in both rule and faith. She was depicted almost as an equal, leading rituals, wearing the blue crown of Pharaoh, and even smiting Egypt's enemies in symbolic scenes. Some scholars, like Joyce Tildesley, suggest she may have co-ruled during parts of his reign, wielding real political power. Their union was also a symbol of divine harmony. In the art of the Amarna period, the couple and their 6 daughters are shown under Aten's rays, each beam ending in hands offering the Ankh. This was more than decoration. It was theology. Aten gave life directly to the royal family, who in turn channeled that life to the people. But not everyone embraced this new order. Many Egyptians were deeply uncomfortable abandoning the gods they had worshipped for centuries. Merchants, farmers, and officials who relied on the old temples for trade, employment, and stability now found themselves in uncertain territory. The move to Akhetaten disrupted economic networks, leaving some provinces feeling neglected or even abandoned. Yet within the city, Akhenaten pressed forward. The architecture of Akhetaten reflected his ideals. No towering pylons or dark inner sanctuaries, but open spaces and courtyards flooded with sunlight. The palace and temples glowed with white limestone, their surfaces carved with hymns to Aten. One famous text, the Great Hymn to the Aten, praises the sun's daily rebirth and universal care, echoing ideas that some have compared to later monotheistic faiths. This was the height of Akhenaten's power, his vision fully realized in stone and ritual. But beneath the surface, tensions brewed. Political unrest, foreign threats, and whispers of dissent in the provinces. Soon, cracks would appear in this shining city of the sun, and the royal family's idyllic image would face its greatest tests. If you've followed the story this far, tell me in the comments, do you think Akhetaten was a utopia ahead of its time, or an isolated dream doomed to fail? While Akhetaten shone brilliantly in the desert sun, storm clouds gathered over Egypt's once stable empire. Beyond its borders, foreign powers tested Egypt's resolve, and within, the radical shift in religion stirred resentment among those who clung to the old gods. Akhenaten's focus on Aten often came at the expense of traditional duties expected of a pharaoh, and this neglect would prove costly. In the north, the Hittite Empire expanded aggressively, seizing territories that had once been loyal to Egypt. In Canaan and Syria, local rulers sent desperate pleas for military aid, pleas preserved in the Amarna letters. clay tablets discovered centuries later. Time and again, vassal kings warned that without Egyptian support, their lands would fall to rival forces. Yet Akhenaten seemed unmoved, more concerned with religious matters than foreign policy. This apparent indifference shocked Egypt's military elite, who were accustomed to pharaohs personally leading campaigns to defend the empire. Akhenaten's absence on the battlefield was unprecedented, fueling whispers that he lacked the courage or will to protect Egypt's borders. For the priests of Amun, still smarting from their loss of power, this was further proof that the heretic king endangered the nation. Inside Egypt, the economic effects of his reforms became harder to ignore. Temples of the old gods had been powerful centers of wealth, employing thousands. Their closure disrupted local economies, leaving entire regions dependent on the uncertain favor of Aten's new priesthood. Common people, once assured of the gods' protection through traditional rituals, now felt abandoned. The familiar festivals and processions that had bound communities together were replaced by ceremonies focused solely on the royal family and Aten. Nefertiti, ever visible by Akhenaten's side, tried to bridge the divide. She made public appearances, received foreign envoys, and took part in diplomatic gestures meant to project unity and strength. Yet even her charisma could not fully heal the fractures growing within the kingdom. Some historians argue that Akhenaten underestimated the depth of attachment Egyptians felt toward their ancient gods. In seeking to erase centuries of belief, he inadvertently united his opponents. Discontent simmered not only in Thebes, home of Amun's greatest temple, but across the Nile Valley. Despite the unrest, Akhenaten pressed forward. He ordered the names of old gods chiseled out of monuments, their images destroyed. Amun's name was struck from inscriptions, and even his father's monuments were altered to reflect the new theology. To Akhenaten, this was purification, removing falsehood to reveal truth. To his enemies, it was sacrilege. The heretic king's world was becoming a fragile glass vessel, dazzling in the light, but vulnerable to the smallest crack. And cracks were indeed forming, not only in the realm he ruled, but perhaps within his own household. The harmony that had defined Akhetaten's early years was about to be tested in ways no one could have foreseen. If you're intrigued by how quickly power and peace can unravel, share this video with a friend who loves history as much as you do. For years, Akhetaten had been presented to Egypt as a city of light, where the royal family thrived under the blessing of Aten. But even in the most carefully crafted image, cracks can form. And for Akhenaten, those cracks began to appear within his own palace walls. The royal family was central to Akhenaten's theology. In countless reliefs, Aten's rays extended only to him, Nefertiti, and their 6 daughters, as if life itself flowed through them to the people. But behind the scenes, tragedy struck. The loss of one of their daughters, likely Akhetaten, was a devastating blow. Evidence of her death comes from tomb scenes at Amarna, where mourners gather as Akhenaten and Nefertiti stand in grief. The cause remains unknown, though scholars speculate it could have been disease, perhaps a plague that swept through the city. This was not the only shadow. Records from the period grow increasingly scarce, hinting at instability. Nefertiti, once a constant presence at Akhenaten's side, seems to vanish from official inscriptions in the later years of his reign. Some suggest she may have died, others that she assumed a new identity, possibly ruling as the mysterious Pharaoh Neferuaten. The truth remains elusive, adding yet another layer of intrigue to Akhenaten's story. Inside the court, political maneuvering intensified. Without Nefertiti's balancing influence, Akhenaten may have grown even more isolated, surrounded by advisors whose loyalty was questionable. The once celebrated harmony of the royal household gave way to whispers of succession struggles. His surviving daughters, though beloved, were not seen as heirs in the traditional sense, and the absence of a strong male successor threatened the dynasty's stability. Beyond the palace, the city of Akhetaten faced its own challenges. Archaeological evidence suggests that disease may have claimed many lives, and the abrupt growth of the city strained resources. While temples to Aten stood gleaming, ordinary citizens dealt with the harsher realities of survival in a new, purpose-built capital. Akhenaten's vision, once radiant, now seemed increasingly fragile. The sun still rose over Akhetaten each day, but the pharaoh's personal losses and the growing unrest in his empire cast long shadows over his reign. Yet he refused to compromise. The worship of Aten continued as the sole state religion, and the suppression of the old gods remained relentless. These personal and political strains would set the stage for the final act of Akhenaten's life, a period of uncertainty, transition, and the beginning of the end for both the city of Akhetaten and the revolutionary faith he had built. If this part of Akhenaten's life has surprised you, comment below with your thoughts. Was he a ruler blinded by devotion, or a visionary willing to pay any price for his beliefs? As the years wore on, Akhenaten's Egypt stood at a crossroads. The once bright promise of Akhetaten dimmed under the weight of political unrest, economic strain, and personal loss. The borders of the empire were vulnerable. Foreign allies had been lost, and the people's faith in Aten's sole supremacy was faltering. Still, Akhenaten remained unwavering, perhaps too unwavering. His belief in Aten's divine truth left little room for compromise. By the later years of his reign, Akhenaten's world had grown smaller. Whether by choice or necessity, he seemed increasingly detached from the broader affairs of Egypt. Foreign correspondences in the Amarna letters grew more desperate and unanswered, suggesting a pharaoh more focused on spiritual devotion than statecraft. The worship of Aten continued with almost obsessive dedication, even as the country's stability hung in the balance. It is in this period that the historical record grows hazy. Scholars debate whether Nefertiti was still alive, possibly ruling alongside him under a different name, or whether she had died, leaving a power vacuum. There is also the mysterious figure of Smenkhkare, who may have been a co-regent, a son, or even Nefertiti herself in a new role. The lack of clarity only deepens the enigma surrounding Akhenaten's final years. Then, suddenly, Akhenaten disappears from history. The exact circumstances of his death remain unknown. No clear burial site has ever been found for him, and his body, if ever discovered, has not been conclusively identified. What we do know is that his death marked the swift unraveling of his religious revolution. Within a few years, Akhetaten was abandoned. The court returned to Thebes. The worship of Amun was restored, and the names and images of Akhenaten were systematically erased from monuments. He was labeled a heretic, his reign treated as an aberration best forgotten. His temples to Aten fell into ruin, and his successors, including the boy king Tutankhamun, worked to restore Egypt's old order. Yet despite this damnatio memori, Akhenaten's story refused to disappear entirely. His radical experiment, often described by modern historians as the earliest known form of monotheism, remains one of the most fascinating chapters in Egypt's history. His art, his city, and his devotion to Aten challenge our understanding of power, faith, and the risks of reshaping a civilization according to one person's vision. Was Akhenaten a visionary centuries ahead of his time, or a ruler whose obsession blinded him to the needs of his people? That is a question that continues to divide scholars and ignite debate. If you've watched until now, make sure to subscribe to the Mysteries of Ancient Egypt so you don't miss our next journey into the lives, triumphs, and mysteries of the pharaohs. And when you finish this video, I recommend you watch our story about Tutankhamun, Akhenaten's successor, whose reign would be shaped entirely by the shadow of the heretic king.